Everybody but us.
Yeah, everyone knew but us.
Everyone knew but us. Here we go.
Everyone knew that noise cancellation
Meant
existed.
noise canceling.
Yeah.
That's what that button meant.
But, I used to think that I knew everything, but I don't.
We're discovering that every day.
This process has been
We have so much to learn.
So much to learn.
Should
we tell our lovely family?
Yeah, friends, welcome to episode 2. You might be wondering, they said they had this amazing guest coming on their podcast for episode 2. Doesn't look like they have a guest on there.
Where is he?
Well, it's your lucky day. You're getting another Lex and Lauren episode. Y'all, this is DIY. 100% DIY. We don't have a producer. We don't have an editor. Episode 1, Lex stepped in. She edited. Oh my goodness. She did amazing. And y'all, she accidentally actually deleted the fully edited episode 1 hour before we launched. And she re-edited the whole thing. So, major props. I'm so appreciative of you.
Of course.
I was out of town working. Alexis was editing.
We were on the phone together, though.
We were. We FaceTimed, and, I feel like we had a good flow. I was, linking things, but it wouldn't have happened without you.
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to take all that.
It wouldn't have, because I wasn't in a space where I could have been editing, so.
But you were there for me, and you were the soothing voice.
I was.
You were my soothing voice.
I was like, we were literally FaceTiming, and I see her face, and she was like, no. And I was like, you didn't do anything. I was like, it's fine. It's still there. Don't worry. You didn't do anything.
Being so encouraging, and all I wanted to do was scream and be like, I did it. I did it. But thankfully,
it worked out.
It worked out, yeah.
And we really want to thank you guys, everyone who supported this podcast, because something that I had to remind both of us right before we were going to launch, I know I was spiraling a little. I was like, I don't want to disappoint anyone. We've had so much support. And it was a big fear that, after having so much support, to, let people down. Mm-hmm. If the quality wasn't good, or if we, people didn't feel like we were engaging or connecting. And then we had some audio issues. Y'all might have noticed in episode 1. It turns out there's actually a noise canceling button on these microphones that, had we pressed it, none of those audio issues would have happened. But
you might be watching a Luke episode right now. But...
Yeah, you might have been watching a Luke episode if we had just, clicked this little blue button that's noise canceling. But you live and you learn. It is trial and error.
It's funny now.
It is funny now, because literally we were testing our mics and we're like, I wonder what this button does. And we clicked it, and suddenly we realized our audio is
cleaner.
Way better. So thank you for...
Sorry.
No, you're good. Thank you for bearing with us on episode 1 when there were really a few little audio glitches. Alexis did amazing on editing, but there were still, some little audio things. But I had to remind us that the people listening are listening out of love and not out of judgment. And so I just appreciate each and every one of you who supported us and who were listening to episode 1.
Yeah, you guys, you really touched my heart. A lot of the people who are listening attend church with us, and you guys, Lauren, I was really sad because Lauren couldn't be there with me on that day, because it was 2 days after we had launched. Guys, you know who you are. Every single person who came up to me and said, you guys did a fantastic job. I loved listening. It felt like we were in the room with you guys and just having a conversation. That is so encouraging, and we really, really appreciate it. And that's what keeps us going.
Yeah.
And will keep us going. Because if it was just us talking for ourselves, I think I would give up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's been... I don't know. I think we underestimated how hard editing would be. Mm-hmm. And since it is just us, I feel like you're having to learn a whole new skill set with editing. And, I'm trying to help the best I can.
It's fun. There are parts of it that are very stressful. And, there are moments where you kind of have to come to and be like, okay, you do have to accept hard truths. Like
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
that could maybe sum it up in one sentence. It's like accepting hard truths, which is it's not always going to work out the way you want it to, but there's always a solution.
You swerve.
You swerve. You pivot.
You pivot. And that's what we did.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. Y'all, we are going to try to get those Luke episodes out. But because Luke's story is so impactful, because it's so powerful, we did not want the quality of those episodes to diminish the impact of the story that Luke has to tell.
Absolutely.
And there's so much in his story. There's so many layers. There's so many chapters of his story. And so we are going to work diligently behind the scenes to get those episodes to you. We don't know when. We just want to kind of give ourselves grace and not add additional stress of like a time crunch, because we
Right.
just want them to come out good.
We're going to have grace for ourselves with this whole process because, like Lauren said, it is new for the both of us. We're jumping into this. It's just us, which makes it a little harder, but we're going to learn a lot. We're going to be refined, I
Yep.
think. Our patience is going to be tested, and we're going to come out on top because Jesus is not going to let us fail. And
Amen.
That is what we keep coming. That's the rock in the center. Like, our friends and family are supporting us, but most importantly, God is behind this. And if He put us on this journey, He's not going to let us fail. And He's not going to let anything happen to, like, make it or break it kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, He gives and takes away, but I just feel so strongly that this is what we're supposed to be doing, and we have God's favor, that things are just going to really pop off, and I truly believe that. But that being said, have grace for us like we have.
Yes.
We're trying to have the grace for
With
ourselves. So we appreciate
Bear
you
with
guys
us.
listening. Bear with us. We're going to get them out, and the episodes are just going to keep getting better and better.
Yes. And did you notice our new microphones? We are doing hairbrush karaoke over here.
Woo, woo, woo.
One of my producers actually, DJ, he is a YouTuber, and he was telling me that a lot of times with these mics, instead of wearing them, people will clip them on things, like funny things like forks and like stuff like that. And I don't think a fork would have really fit our vibe, but I
Not
immediately was like, but a hairbrush would.
Literally, like, you could not, honestly, you can't buy this for $250 anywhere you go.
No. And this is like, our show is a slumber party where we talk about Jesus.
Yeah.
And
look at us.
What is more slumber party than doing hairbrush
Hairbrush
karaoke? I can't think of anything more slumber party. So it's perfect.
I think it's great.
It's going to help with the audio. And
It's comfortable, too. Like, I'm just sitting here.
It's like,
I mean, be honest, how many times have you guys, like, as you're cleaning your house or you're by yourself, grabbed a remote or
then,
grabbed your
like,
hairbrush?
let's go,
I'm
girls.
sorry to say it.
We are gifted, okay, y'all? We are gifted.
I'm not going to say it, but okay.
So that's the
That's the
tea.
sitch.
That's the tea. On why you're getting more of us. But it's going to be a fun episode. We are going to do an episode on testimony and kind of dive into what our testimony is, why we should share our testimony, and then we're going to share our testimonies as well. We wanted to kick off, if you are watching on YouTube, you probably noticed we are in theme today. I have my Trump hat on. Lex has her Trump
My Trump
Eras
shirt.
themed t-shirt on. And we're in theme because I had an encounter with President Trump. I'll call it that. It's not really, but
Well, you call it what you want.
that's what do they call it?
An exaggeration.
Okay, well, yes. But what do they call it?
So
Like a clickbait. It's like a clickbait. I had an encounter with President Trump. No, but so I was working my second job, and I work with a motor company at races. And so I was at the Daytona 500, and President Trump came to the Daytona 500. And we do want to mention, you guys, like, if we know that people of all different political backgrounds will be tuning in. We don't want anyone to feel isolated. Everyone is welcome here.
Yeah, this is your space too. We don't pass judgment on who you voted for, what your political alignment is.
Like, we love everyone. If you are listening, like, we have love for you. And
grace.
Yes.
And we hope that you have grace for us too. Because we don't want it, this isn't to push our political agenda on anyone or what we personally believe. This is just something fun for us.
It's fun for us, and like, we personally feel that our Christian values most align with Donald Trump in this past election. There's so much that we could say on that, and I'm sure in time we will.
Yeah, we definitely will.
But we want everyone to know you are welcome here, no matter what your political affiliation is. We love you, and we're just glad you're here. And for us, like, the pink and the Trump, we just love it. It's fun.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe. I mean, yeah, it's a vibe. And anyway, so Trump was at the Daytona 500, and the reason we wanted to share this story is because not only is it kind of like it's been in the news a bit. I don't know how much on the news, but I've seen it a lot on social media. But I wanted to share this story because I feel like right now, if you turn on the news, if you look on social media, all you see are stories about division, division, division. Like, you see the stories about the deportations and people rioting and fighting in the streets, and it just seems like that is what the mainstream media is pushing right now. Is it's just like telling us, like, everyone's divided, everyone's unhappy, like, just really perpetuating the division and making us believe that there's division everywhere. But I was there. I was standing there as Air Force One flew over Daytona Speedway, and it was just gliding over Daytona Speedway, and
Coolest thing ever.
the airport is right next to the speedway, so like, it was low, and it just glided over, and like, everyone just turned and was in awe. And we were talking about thousands of people filling up this speedway, and everyone was just looking in awe. Everyone started chanting, USA, USA. And so I just felt like in that moment, like, we are actually so unified. And there is a lot of this country that is really unified right now. And so I think while the media might be trying to portray that we're all so divided, there's a lot more unity than people think.
100.
And so hopefully that can shine some light that we are a lot more alike than we think. And there's more unity than division. And that's kind of the goal. That is one of our goals.
Yeah, I would
is to unify people.
Yeah, yes. I would encourage people to do what we're doing and have conversations. Because I will say that, like, conversations with people who I don't agree with have opened my eyes to a lot of things, and there are a couple of things that I have, like, taken a step back on. Me, like, if you guys know me, you know that, like, I'm very firm in my beliefs, but actually taking the time to sit down and respect the other person and listen, if love is listening, like in Torwell's new song Making Room, if love starts with listening, then we need to take the time and listen to our neighbor, listen to our friend, listen to our family member, because most of the time they feel a certain way because they have gone through something, they are going through something, or they're hurting or suffering. And us too. People that are more aligned with what we believe in, like, they are suffering too. So take the time to listen to the other person.
Yes.
Hear what they have to say. Hear their story, which we're going to be getting into today, is our personal stories in our lives, and how that's impacted them and how that's impacted what they believe. And if I could encourage you, that's what I would say, is to take the time to listen to other people.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a while because I really had to come to terms with the fact that Lex does not like sweets.
I did not know where you were going with this.
At first, I really thought we couldn't be friends. I'm just kidding.
I'm salty about it.
I'm sure you are, Miss Salty over there. Yeah, she doesn't like. I was like, after our first podcast, like weekend, she was over, and I was like, we should go get ice cream. And she was like, I really don't like sweets. And I was like, I guess I can accept that.
You listened to me.
I listened to you.
I like savory things.
I didn't let that divide us.
You didn't. We're unified in the fact that we like tea and coffee.
Yeah, we like coffee.
We love coffee.
And we do like tea as well, but we really like coffee.
See,
So,
we found something that
could unify us.
could unify because we were so far apart.
So far. I was really on the verge. It's like, done. This girl. Bad idea to start a podcast with her.
Wrong-o.
Okay. Sorry, I had to throw that out there, and she had no idea I was going to do that. I actually had no idea I was going to do that.
Good.
Okay, so now we are going to get into our first segment.
Yeah.
That is,
He said that.
he said that. All right, so he said that. We are diving into testimony.
Mm-hmm.
And
The power of the testimony.
yes, so I kind of, we were discussing beforehand, and we want to start with what is our testimony? Because I was telling Alexis before we started recording that I remember when my mom and I were becoming members at the church I had grown up in, and we were going through like the membership like orientation, and at the end they had a paper where they had you write out your testimony, and my mom was like, I don't have one. And I mentioned on episode 1, my mom just has this like underlying faith that it's just there. And she always talks about how when she was a little girl, the school bus would like pick them up at the end of the street and take them to church on Sundays. And so she would like go just like hop on like as a little kid and go to church on her own. And
What?
yeah, she's always told our church like, y'all need to do that. And I think nowadays there's too many like liabilities, but she was like, go to the apartment complexes and just like pick up the kids. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
she would go get on the school bus and go to church like on her own as a kid. But she doesn't have like one big moment. And it really kind of allowed me to look at testimony and view it as, for some people, it's one big moment. For some people, it is the come to Jesus moment. And then I think for other people, it's a million little moments. It's every little encounter that you have with God. Every little God wink.
Yeah.
Like, that is your testimony. It is your encounters with Jesus. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Like,
Right.
it doesn't, I think we
Like
also
a
get,
tragedy or something.
yeah, we get caught up in thinking like your testimony has to be this
Epic
tragic
thing,
moment.
yeah.
But for some people, like, your testimony is all the like wonderful things God has done in your life and just like seeing that.
Yeah.
And so ultimately your testimony is any encounter that you have with God. Any encounter that you have with God that has built your faith.
Yeah, I was going to say that builds your faith or change or alters the trajectory of your faith.
Yep.
And
like your trust in him.
yeah, and they are powerful
Yeah.
to share.
Yes. So essentially our testimony is seeing God in action, like seeing him at work. And it really is all the little God winks, and I mean, there are big moments too, but I just think,
Well, I'm thinking about all the people who were like raised in church and have been in church their whole life, kind of what your mom was saying, like, I don't have a testimony, but it's like you have a different type of testimony. You probably have a testimony of God's enduring love and compassion and what faith means and the consistency of God. Like, even in like maybe moments where you weren't as faithful, but you were still in the church, like your story is just as impactful as like someone like me who, knew God but chose not to live a life for him and consequences.
And then did have
And
like your
then
come to
had
Jesus
my
moment.
come to Jesus moment, which is really impactful in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're the same, and like they're all going to affect the right people.
Right.
They're going to impact the right person who's hearing it.
Yeah. And it doesn't make one testimony more important or more legitimate than another. Like
Right.
having a, very, I don't want to say dramatic, but like having a come to Jesus moment that's very like tragic or big doesn't make your testimony any more powerful or
Like,
any
it doesn't
more
have to be
important.
life changing.
Yes, like then someone who just has like this slow over time progression testimony. Like one is not more important than the other. Like everyone's journey to Jesus is important, and everyone's journey to Jesus
Looks different.
looks different, and like sharing it is going to impact someone differently too, like you
Yeah.
were just saying. So like everyone's journey is equally as important. And also I think our testimony is so important because it's really like we can read the Bible, but our testimony shows us that like God is still working today. And like we read the Bible and it's like that's forever ago. Like that's history. Like that's like he was doing that back then. Like I think it's
Yeah.
really easy. Like we talk about at church like miracle moments, and like you read all the Bibles and all the miracles in the Bible, and it's like, oh yeah, but that was like back then.
Yeah, it's so far removed from today, which is just false.
Yeah, he's
Because
still doing
he's
it.
still working today. And, we wouldn't know that unless people shared their testimony.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
like that's literally how we can let people know like no, God's still doing it.
He's the same God that he was then, and he's the same God now.
Yep. Same
Yeah.
God still doing it.
Still capable of moving in huge ways. Even if I know we just got done saying like your testimony doesn't have to be like this huge impactful thing, but like God is still,
He's still doing big things.
he's still doing big things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so there are basically a few forms of a testimony. It can be overcoming challenges. It can be in healing. It can be in provision, times that God has come in and provided in your life. And then, like we kind of mentioned, literally the God winks, like all those little encounters, I truly believe can become a part of your testimony.
It built, like, it's certainly for me in my experience over the last year, like those little moments have built my faith. And it's emotional when you realize it, because then you're like, man, you're so good
I know. You're like,
all
wait,
the time.
you did that and you did that and you did that.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
you don't always like realize it immediately. Sometimes it can be like a month later, 6 months later, a year, 2 years. Like, I mean, I'll share this later, but 2 years ago, did I think I would be here? No. But then I'm looking back and I'm like, whoa,
yeah,
like that. This was part of the plan.
you can see the map. Like, oh, that's what he had in store. So that is essentially what your testimony is. And now we want to get into why we should share our testimony and what the Bible says, what Jesus says about sharing your testimony. So first verse we want to dive into today is Luke 8:39. Return home and declare how much God has done for you. And so this is Jesus speaking to a man who he has just freed from demons. And this man is wanting to follow Jesus. He's wanting to stay. He's wanting to follow him. And Jesus is saying, no, I want you to go and I want you to tell everybody what God just did. Like, I want you to go spread the glory of God. And so that is a call to all of us. And if we're going to be obedient to God, if we're going to live in obedience to God, then we got to go share our testimony. We got to go tell
it's
everybody.
Essential. It is essential, and it's part of. So I feel like I'm kind of like having this like revelation, but like a lot of people wonder what sharing the good news is. It's literally sharing your testimony. What is the good news? It's how God worked in your life and how God turned you around, and that's just crazy that I'm just now realizing that. And if you ever wonder, like, how do I do that? You start by sharing little by little.
Yep.
You know?
And I think that's kind of the beauty in recognizing that your testimony can come in different forms. Because there might be a moment where you share, you know, maybe you do have a come to Jesus moment and maybe you share that whole thing, or maybe it's just like in passing with a coworker and you're like talking about just like, oh my goodness, you know, there was a time actually not that long ago that I had just moved here and I had like not submitted my timesheet on time. And so I didn't get my pay in time. And I was literally, you guys, digging through purses looking for like dollar bills. And I'm telling you, God provided like to the penny
Oh my gosh, I love it when you
what
does that.
I needed to pay my rent.
Oh my
And I was just like, I went to Wells Fargo and I'm like depositing this money. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I was just finding like the exact amount of dollar bills. Cause like I had money in my account, but I needed like $70 more or something. And I'm like going through purses, finding dollar bills. And it was like he provided like to the penny what I needed. And I was like, only God. Like
only.
it can only be God.
Only.
And so like then there's other stories like that you might be sharing in a different moment for someone who's going through like a financial struggle, or so
Sure.
there will be different parts of your testimony for different times that you'll share with different people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ooh, I
So
love that.
that is the first reason why is obedience, because we do want to live a life obedient to God, and he calls us to.
And these things are so wonderful, like you can't help but want to share them.
Yeah. You want to like shout it from the rooftops. I mean, I think that's why we love our God Wink segment, because when we have these moments and like we'll instantly voice memo each other, because it's just like, it's so exciting.
It's so
when
fun.
you see God working in your life.
Yeah.
Like it is so exciting. So the second verse is John 4:39. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. And so this verse is in regards to the woman at the well. And I feel like that is a story that many of us know. It's a really well-known Bible story, but you know, Jesus approaches this woman at the well and he knows her background. He knows her sins. He still approaches her.
When no one else, like she, for some background, like she was shunned by the community because of her promiscuity.
Yes.
And so she was forced, excuse me, she was forced to get water by herself when no one else was at the well. And which is crazy because that was the perfect opportunity for Jesus to approach her.
Yeah. And
Her only.
she then went, you know, she was in shock because Jesus knew all these things about her. And like, how would he know these things? Well, because he's God.
Yeah.
Because he's God. But, you know, she's like in shock and she goes back and she tells everyone. And that led so many people to believe in Jesus. And so.
In Samaria, out of all places, where people think that, like, God is just, or Jesus is just for Christians. Get that out of your head.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the disciples were called to be witnesses to the Gentiles, people who did not already believe in God, people who weren't Jews, people who weren't established as a Christian. Like, God is for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's impactful. I think that's impactful. That just goes to show that, yes, your testimony is important, but also your testimony is meant to reach the world.
Yes.
Go out and reach the world.
And
Every nation, every tongue will proclaim that Jesus is Lord. And, like, that's the goal. You know?
the more you speak your testimony, the more you're telling these stories, the more you're talking about these encounters, like the more opportunity you have to reach more and more people.
And the more comfortable you get.
Yes.
Like, because I know at the beginning it's kind of like you want to share it, but you still have like those human fears of like rejection and like, is this person going to think I'm crazy? Or, oh, they don't want to hear my story. They don't believe in God. Why would they care? But I'm telling you.
Those are the people that need it the most, though.
Oh my gosh. And they're the people who are searching for it without even realizing it.
Yeah. And we're kind of going to talk about how to get good at sharing your testimony, but I just think, like it's the people that you're probably going to feel the most uncomfortable to talk about God with that you need to be talking about God with. But like, you can do it in such a way where you just like start telling a story, you know? And
Yeah.
but I know you might be thinking like, okay, they might think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, it's what we're called to do.
I
Like,
don't care.
it is what
People
we are
already
called
think I'm crazy.
to do. Our testimony can encourage others. I always say, like, let's make heaven crowded. I love that phrase. I'm like, we want heaven to be as packed as it can be.
It's a party. It's a party.
It's a party. It really is going to be a party, y'all.
For real.
Okay, so let's see here. So they can come from, okay, yeah, so your testimonies can come from your challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of something that I feel like we recently touched on in one of our church services, but like your challenges, whether they're challenges that bring you shame, whether they're challenges that you would rather run from and hide from and like lock them up in a box and never think of them again, it is likely that someone is going through that same challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And when you share, you can encourage them, you can help them get through that, you can help them see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that there's a beautiful life on the other side of that challenge, whatever it is.
Yeah, like there is redemption.
Mm-hmm. I think you're like when you get into, like, you're a beautiful representation of that. And we'll get into your testimony, but you're a beautiful, like, amazing example just of there being so much beauty on the other side.
Yeah.
And so much joy and light and happiness.
Because there is.
Mm-hmm. There really is. And it's all about encouraging others to trust in God. And I was singing before, and Alexis was like, I don't know where that's from. But I was like, if he did it for me, he can do it for you. If he did it for me, he can do it for you. And that might pop into y'all's head, or y'all might be like, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about either, you crazy person. But it is from, thank God, the Mav City Music song.
Like the
I thank God. Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know why that lyric plays in my head on repeat like all the time.
I'm gonna have to re-listen to that song and find that.
It's kind
point.
of like in between. It's like when like he's just talking, but he just keeps saying like, if he did it for me, he can do it for you. And it's like, that is what's going to touch people, is because they're going to be like, wait, like if he did it for them, then he can do it for me too.
No question about it.
Like
no doubt.
If he rescued me out of anxiety and depression, like he can rescue you out of anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
If he rescued somebody out of alcoholism, he can rescue you out of alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like he can do it, and he will do it in your life. And it's just having the trust and the faith and stepping into his promises.
Well, I think like for people who have hit rock bottom in their life, it's almost like, what do you have to lose? Because you've kind of lost everything else, like your dignity and like your hope and your belief in yourself. And like when all that's taken away, like why not believe in him? Why not go searching for him? Like, what else do you have to lose? Like, and when I'm telling you guys, he will fill all of the voids almost immediately. Like, at least in my life, all of those things, anxiety, depression, sadness, all of that, like I don't have anxiety like I had it before.
Yeah.
Hardly ever. And like I was ridden with it, you know? And I'll save a lot of that for later, but it's I don't know. I'm just like, if you're in that moment, like give him a chance. You know, even if you have for so long like rejected him or denied him or refused to believe in him because of someone hurt you in the past, like don't let people get in the way of God, because God is all powerful and God surpasses all of that.
Yeah.
Like, don't get upset about what one Christian told you and how they didn't act like a Christian. Like, don't get so caught up in that. Focus on God and work and like watch him literally turn your life around. That's all I gotta say.
And the final thing, and yeah, it kind of, I feel like it kind of just even goes off of that, because it's also, as we begin to share our testimony, we're strengthening our own faith too.
Mm-hmm.
And we're reminding ourselves, as we share what God has done in our life, we're reminding ourselves of his faithfulness, and we are becoming more and more aware of his presence in our life.
Totally.
And I think the more you recognize it, the more you share it, the more you talk about it, the more you recognize it, the more you see things.
And for me, I don't know about for you, but I'm more joyful. Like I'm more like, I have happiness, and like there was a point in my life where I had to force myself to feel that way. But now, like literally on the way here, it's 30 degrees, it's raining, the I-35 is...
Girlfriend's wearing shorts.
I'm wearing...
I could hear you like running up the stairs. Like I could hear your feet. And so I was in the studio, and I start like running through my apartment. I was like, oh, I've got to unlock the door. And she like is knocking on the door, and I open it, and like there she is in shorts with like a giant coat. And I was like, what are you doing in shorts? It's like freezing outside.
I don't care.
But she still had joy. She was like, I'm freezing and I've got joy.
But that, that being said, like, it's not the best circumstances, but like I was just like listening to worship music, and literally like every worship song now, when I listen to it, I just like, I'm so happy, and I have a big smile on my face, because everything that like they say in these worship songs, it's true. Mm-hmm. Like it's true. I wish I could be more...
You start resonating with those songs, and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah. You're
what?
hearing the lyrics, and you're like, yes, yes. And I also think the more we share and the more we are aware of his presence, it also is like, I feel like we need to take note of those. And we were just talking about this, because I was like, I don't remember where I heard this. I don't know if it was on a podcast. I don't know if it was in a service. But having a little, like, either a note section in your phone or in your journal where you write down every time you encounter God, like every time he provides for you, every time he,
calms
heals you or calms you when you're having anxiety, like write it down. And then when you're having those moments, like when you're in the middle of anxiousness, you look at that and you're like, oh my goodness, he has come through for me all of these times. Why would he not come through again? Mm-hmm. And that is part of that.
Building your faith.
Building your faith. Like, your testimony is going to build your faith.
And when you reach moments where, like, you don't have a lot of faith and, like, you're in a valley, that's a good exercise to do, is to start writing down everything that God has done in your life, and then take a step back, look at it, and be like, all right.
He'll get me through it again.
Yeah.
He's done it before. He'll do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to end, before we get into our testimonies, this verse really just was powerful to me, because I think it encompasses kind of just being prepared. And that's what I was saying. Mm-hmm. We were going to talk about how to get comfortable sharing your testimony. But looking at 1 Peter 3:15, it says, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have." And to me, this is just like, be ready, be on alert, like be ready for those moments. Mm-hmm. Because as a Christian, you're gonna get asked. The most powerful tool we have, I think, is our testimony when talking to non-believers. Mm-hmm. Because we, like, if I know you, or I know someone and they tell me an experience they had, it's way easier to connect with that than it is for a non-believer to connect with reading the Bible. 100%. Like people that they don't know, names that sound foreign to them, which versus when I'm your friend and I'm telling you, oh my gosh, this happened, this story, like, it's so much easier for someone to connect.
It's so much more relatable.
Yes, with an experience of someone they know in current time. Mm-hmm. And so we need to be prepared to share that, and we need to practice sharing it. And so that starts with sharing it in your community, with your Bible study, with your small group, with your book club, when you're just having coffee with your girlfriends, you know, sharing that testimony, or your guy friends, sharing your testimony and getting really comfortable. Because as you get more comfortable, you will have moments where you feel a little tug, and like you'll be in a conversation and there will be like a little pull or a little tug, like, hey, you need to share. Like, you need to share with this person. Like, they need to hear this. And I have been in those moments and I felt that little tug, and there have been times where I haven't done it. And
Yeah, same.
I couldn't muster it up. I couldn't get myself to say the words that I knew. Like, I felt it right here, like welling up, like, come on, girl, say it. And I couldn't do it. And I think the more comfortable you get with sharing, with talking about it, it just will become second nature to you. And then it's just like casually comes up in conversation. We kind of mentioned that with Luke. Like, he can just bring God into any conversation. And I admire those people so much because I'm still trying to get there.
Right.
And it also, you got to put your worry about what people think. You got to let go of that. You have to drop it, because well, some people maybe think like, oh, okay, she's a Jesus freak, whatever. Like, maybe they will, but like,
Yeah, but maybe they won't. And I was gonna save this for another episode, but I think like kind of fits right now. Like in the last couple months, you know about this, but in the last couple months, I had some friends in town,
yes,
and um, the whole time leading up to that weekend, I was like, God, how am I going to be an example for my friends? Like, what am I going to say to them that is going to open their hearts to you? A big ask, right? And this whole weekend, I was like thinking this in my head, and I was being very mindful of my actions. I was being very mindful of like what I would say and what parts of the conversation that I wouldn't participate in, or I would just stay quiet. And it was the second night they were in town. Actually, it was the first night we went out. It was a Friday. We had gone to a non-alcoholic bar in downtown Austin, a bar that serves non-alcoholic beverages. And it was a trivia night, and we knew the person who owns the bar and was running it. And he, at the end of the night, he's like, what's different about you? And I kind of just looked at him. And so the following night, we didn't have time to get into it, but he was just like, I want to talk to you. I was like, and in my head, I immediately
you have the God glow.
Yeah, like I immediately knew what it was about. And I didn't even like have to say, like, I started going back to church. Like, he immediately knew something was different about me without me even having to say something. But all that being said, I'm getting into like the testimony part. Is the following night, again towards the end of the night, he said, you and I need to talk. And I said, okay, you're right. So I said, come on, come sit next to me. I said, what you got? And he just said, so what's up? And I said, well, funny you asked. I started going back to church. God, and I started going into my testimony. And like, I'm telling you, the look on his face, and I even said, like, I even had the courage to say, like, I have to be honest, I didn't know how I was going to be a witness this weekend. I didn't know how that was going to happen. And I was praying and really urgently asking God, like, use me this weekend. And wouldn't you know, the people I was thinking about,
the people
being
you
a witness for,
yes,
wasn't who God had in store for me to be a witness to. Like that, our other friend was, and I would have never guessed, this friend was who I was supposed to reach out to and share my testimony with. And can I tell you, after, he looks at me and he just says, thank you. And that's it. And the conversation ended and we moved on. And I just felt so elated.
I remember you telling me about this. Yeah.
Because he said, it's like shining off of you. And I was like, that's Jesus. That's not me.
Yeah. We are coining that the God glow.
Yeah.
From now on.
Yeah. And that's not the first time I've heard it.
That's the true glow up.
Yeah. literally the ultimate glow up is having Jesus in your heart, because people, like, I can't even tell you how many people have said, you are shining, like you are glowing, and it exudes off of you. And like, that's the biggest
It
compliment.
does.
That's the biggest compliment I could ever receive, is that people can see
Jesus
God
through
in
you.
me. Like, I gave a lady at church the other day a hug, and she said, "Oh Lord, the Holy Spirit is on this one," and I was like, "Oh yeah,
Yes, it is.
hallelujah."
Oh,
But yeah,
I mean, it is the people that you least expect.
yeah,
And that's like, you never know who you're going to reach. You never know who needs to hear it, who needs that conversation, but God does.
but God does.
And He's going to put you in the right rooms. He's going to put you around the right people. He has a plan. We can't see it. But so when you feel those little nudgings, or even just like you were just living that weekend with this,
I had expectancy in my heart.
yeah, and you were living and carrying yourself in a different way. And sometimes
with intent.
sometimes it's like not only your words but also just your actions, because people see it. They see how you're moving different.
Your literal, like, your posture, I think, also speaks a lot to you. Like, I've noticed that I've slowed down a lot. I'm taking time to experience the little moments, and like my physical movements are slower, and it's just like, that's someone who has peace, right?
Yeah.
And it's like Lauren said, you never know who you're meant to be a witness to.
Yeah.
Only God does.
It could, I mean, it can be someone you're sitting next to on an airplane. It can be someone you pass by. I was telling Lex before, but one of my discipleship partners at my church back in Dallas, she had told me that like she had gotten to a point, and I hope I get to this point, but she had gotten to a point where before she would go into like the grocery store or, you know, different places, she would in her car pray, like, Lord, bring me to someone within this store that like needs to hear from me. Like, bring me to someone that I can share my testimony with, that I can talk about you with. And she would have these encounters. Like, she would pray in her car and she would walk in the store.
That's so
and she would
crazy.
have these encounters, and it's like, to me, that's still scary, because
Yeah,
I'm like, you know,
it is.
I still struggle in some of those moments, and I am getting better at it. And the more you talk about it, the more you just kind of casually bring up God, the more you just kind of work Him into your everyday conversations, like the more comfortable you get. But there are still moments where I get so nervous, like,
Yeah, same.
where I feel the pull, but I'm just like, or like,
You're
you
like,
know,
are you sure?
people at work, it's like, you know, they're saying something, or they're talking about like, you know, manifesting, or, you know, spiritual things. And it's those moments where I'm like, you know, or prayer. there's this guy named Jesus. We heard of him.
Manifesting some crazy spirits, because they will come.
But actually, like, I'm just like starts shouting out words. But
That's funny.
you do have to kind of give up yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Put down your pride and just like know that there might be some awkward conversations. Some people might be like,
Yeah.
you know, kind of,
Because it's not up to you to convince them.
yeah.
Like, yes, your testimony is meant to be an example, but like ultimately it's up to God to work in their hearts and change them. I think that's an important takeaway. Like, don't go into it thinking, if they, like, you share your testimony and someone rejects you, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
you did
you
your part.
part, and maybe that planted a seed. It's up to them, again, because God gives us the choice to accept Him or to deny Him.
Exactly.
And you gotta kind of let the...
Yeah. You're being obedient. You share, and then you let God do the rest. Like,
And I think that's where a lot of, like, Christians get...
well, you can't just shake it into them.
Yeah, that, I think, like, that's the reason why I kind of... This is going to sound wild, because we are Christian conservatives, and I've told you this before, but I
don't know what you're about to say, and you're scaring me.
No, I've told you this before.
Okay.
But for a really long time...
Because we are Christian conservatives.
We are.
We are.
but for a long time before I was like back in my faith, Christian conservatives were my least favorite people.
Yes, I do remember you talking this.
And for a reason, because they're a lot of Christians, we are judgmental, and they just for some reason think that like if like you have to listen to what I have to say. And like if you don't believe in that, like if you're not going to accept that when I'm telling you the truth, then okay. Like I'm going to keep drilling it into your head.
Right.
Like stop. Stop. Yeah. Like you're giving Jesus a bad rep by doing that. And there's a reason why even people who have grown up in church have walked away. Like and why people who don't even know him refuse to try, because a lot of Christians will try to like force it down people's throats. Stop. Let God work. That's not your job. Your job is to be a light and share your testimony and love people. Bye-bye. Done. You know what I mean? Sorry.
Well, we don't have the power. We don't have the power to make someone believe. We have our experiences to share. That's the obedience portion. And then God has the power to actually change someone's heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it is free will.
So you can't get upset when they don't.
They have to make that choice for themselves. But you can be a catalyst for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can let God's light shine through you, and that can impact people in ways that you don't even know.
Yeah.
I mean, people that you don't even know.
It might impact them 2 weeks after you've talked to them, you know? Give them time. Give them grace, too, you know?
So that kind of wraps up testimonies, and hopefully y'all will get on this journey with us of just preparing, gearing up to be ready to share with anyone and everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now more than ever, it's like such a crucial time. The world's a crazy place. Like, it is such a crazy place, and I think back into the Mav City music, but like Hell Lost Another One. Like, I get down to that song because it's just like, let's rob heaven. Like, I mean, I love that idea. Rob hell. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let's please don't.
We did pray before this episode.
Alexis is like, I don't know her. She's headed to heaven with a ski mask on.
Okay, if you could think about like if there was a guard dog for heaven, what kind of dog would it be?
Ooh, see, I'm imagining a
for heaven.
For heaven?
Yeah, I would be like it would have to be a chihuahua or a poodle. Because it's going to be the dog that people don't expect, right? Because the first will be last.
I'm sorry.
This all starts because you said you wanted to rob heaven.
Okay, sorry. Oh my goodness. I don't want to rob heaven, you guys.
She wants to rob hell.
I want to rob hell.
Yes.
I want to rob hell. Oh my goodness. Wow.
It was funny. It was really funny.
Alexis is like, no. No. Let's rob hell. And we're all on that mission together. And I think right now we are truly in a battle. We're in a battle, like every single day. And like literally getting as many people to heaven as we can. And I just feel like it's crunch time.
Totally.
Like, and if you love someone, you don't want to imagine heaven without them.
Yeah.
So, like, we are on a mission to rob hell and get as many people in heaven as we can. And if you love someone, do what you can do.
Because again, Heaven Street. It's a party. It's a party.
It's a party.
Do you
It's a
want your
party.
friends or family to miss out on the party?
No, you don't.
The biggest party on the block?
You want them there.
You want them there.
And all dogs go to heaven, so
All dogs go to
they
heaven.
will be there. They will be there.
And I know I said Chihuahuas would probably be the guard dog, but I really don't think that. Sorry.
All dogs go to heaven.
Okay.
All dogs.
Cats, though?
All cats go to heaven.
Okay.
All God's creatures. All
All right,
little
all right, all right,
creatures.
Okay.
It's the loving creatures.
You're right.
Yeah, we got sidetracked there, y'all. I sent us on a spiral.
It's fun, though.
It's glorious. Thank you, Dutch Bros, for my over caffeination. I literally pulled up to the window and I was like, whenever I order my Dutch Bros, I'm like super paranoid because they do have non-caffeinated drinks, and so I'm always paranoid that they're gonna get it wrong. And so I'll order it and then I'll be like and make sure it has caffeine in it. And she was like, yeah, it comes with it. It's made with coffee. And I was like, okay, just confirming. I really need that caffeine. Clearly, I really needed that caffeine.
Tragic.
Can you imagine not even getting the
No.
I
bet this is a ripoff.
don't need the milkshake. I need the coffee.
I need the caffeine.
Okay, where were we?
Well, I think we're about to dive into our own testimonies.
We are, and actually, that brings us into our next segment, our God Winks segment. That was a horrible wink.
Well, yours was a lot more graceful than mine. I'm like,
Really? I felt like mine was bad. Let's see.
oh my gosh, so nice.
Really?
Yeah.
I need to start winking.
It was very feminine.
I'll be out and about, just like, oh, hey.
I can't do that. I look like I'm like twitching.
You have to start doing the, like, double take look, though.
I do.
Because she's been seeing handsome men everywhere. At the gas station.
The HEB.
At the grocery store. And at the gas station,
Lord help me.
she looked at the guy. And I'm like, if you had done the look back, like, you got to look at him.
I looked at
look
him
away,
and immediately looked away.
and then you have to look back. Like, you know?
I just like, sometimes I get really awkward.
It's like the double look, and then they'll come say hi.
You think so? I'm going to try it next time.
It's a tragedy.
And I'm going to let you know.
It's not a tragedy. It's a strategy. It is a tragedy that you didn't.
It is a tragedy because he was good. God spent some time
It
on
is
that
a
one.
tragedy.
Golly, he was good looking.
I need to start going out with you more.
There was a time in my life where I was very bold,
I
and I
really-
would approach men.
I actually wished you had seen this guy tonight when you spilled gasoline on your foot.
I would have been like, please help me.
It would have sparked conversation.
It would have. I would be like, did you see that?
Did you see what just happened?
Can you smell it? Do I stink? Okay, sorry guys. We're
Oh
getting
my
way
goodness.
off track.
Yeah, we've gone way off track. Okay. Now we're getting into our God Winks, which we just said is essentially your testimony.
Mm-hmm.
It is when you hear from God. So we are tying in our own personal testimonies as our God Winks for the week.
Yep.
Do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
Whatever you feel comfortable with. I can go.
I can go either way. I'll let you go.
I'll go. I don't know if I'll share the whole thing because I feel like there's a moment in time for certain parts of it.
Yeah, I feel like we can do the Spark Notes edition.
Yeah, very brief overview. So I grew up in the church, starting at age probably like 4 or 5 until I graduated high school. And then there was a very brief moment. I had moved back here in the middle of college and needed another reset. Home just always seems to be that for me. And I had kind of gone back with my parents, and then I just kind of stopped. So I've always had a foundation of faith and a foundation of like the spirituality of everything. I was exposed to like spiritual gifts, tongues and interpretation, which to some people is really bizarre, but actually I I break down every time I hear it because it is beautiful. And it's very, knowing where it's coming from is just, it makes you stop in your tracks. But that being said, I was raised in the faith, graduated high school, and completely like discarded all of that. I wanted to kind of find my own way.
Like, there I go again on my own.
Yeah, exactly. And I had just, to put it nicely, I had gone, excuse me, but like balls to the walls. Like I went crazy. I experimented with drugs, not like crazy hard stuff. I mean, the hardest I've tried. I mean, one of the most recent sermons was kind of like saying the loud, quiet part out loud, and so I'm gonna share my testimony, and I'm gonna be detailed to a certain extent. I mean, like the hardest drug I've done was cocaine, and I did it semi-frequently. When it was available, I would try it. So I experimented with drugs, got started using marijuana, and from that moment on, it took me a really long time to stop. Years, a decade, over a decade. And then alcoholism. And I want to kind of like differentiate, like there's a difference in being an alcoholic and then abusing alcohol. And what I was doing was abusing it. And of course, you also have to consider I was in college, and that kind of just,
I think it's a time period where a lot of people
overindulge in alcohol.
Yes.
So I'm not going to sit here and say that I was an alcoholic at age 21 because that's insane. But over time, I started to rely on it as a crutch. And when times got hard for me or I was not feeling my best, I would go drink until I couldn't anymore. And sometimes that looked like me passing out and not knowing where I was. Now, I'll be honest, did I have a great time in college? Yes, I did. Do I regret it? Oh, maybe a couple things, but overall, no. I don't regret my past. So, kind of just like that's kind of the world I was in: drugs, alcohol, sex. All this time though, like in the moments that I had really low points, I did always know that God was there because he's who I would cry out to. When I did have those moments, like even though I wasn't like practicing my faith, I knew that he was there, and like I would just be like, God help me, or like, you know,
You knew
if
he
you're
never left
there.
you.
Yeah, and he never left. He was always there. And then I started getting into some abusive relationships. And it wasn't physical abuse, but it was mental, verbal, emotional, sexual. And those really kind of just different relationships. And that kind of like led to a spiral downward. I kind of relied on men to validate me, and would always be looking for that, which would make me crazy, and seek male attention more often than not.
And I think a lot of us women deal with that.
Yeah. Especially when you have been abused in that way, your self-confidence it goes all the way down. And so if you don't have that, it's really hard to like see things from the outside. Like my friends could see it happening, and like I was just in such a bad spot that I like refused to believe them, and it affected our friendship, and that I do regret. But the reality of the situation is that I didn't know my own worth. So, you know, time went on. My last relationship was a 4 or 5 year relationship. And that time period was a lot of learning and building self-confidence back. But it was also a very toxic relationship. And so that relationship had ended. I was living in New Orleans at the time. I basically got like pushed out of my house, had to find a place really quickly, found a little tiny apartment. And that was my first time living alone. And those 6 months, I had started seeing someone else, and like that didn't end the best way either. That was on me, but it was because I was so, my world had been like shaken. Like the relationship I was in for 5 years, gone. I ruined that. Um, I was alone. My finances were an absolute disaster. I was like hundreds of dollars in the negative all the time. And I didn't know how. I was working a lot, which didn't make sense to me. I was like, how am I working this much and I can't pay to live? So like all of this, and that affects your mental health, right? Like, you start to doubt again. Your self-confidence starts to plummet again, right when I had felt that I had got all that back. Um, so at a certain point, my breaking point, I think, my mom was like, why don't you come back home? And there was a part of me that was just like, no, like I don't want to have to go home for things to be, when I say home, I mean here in Austin.
Right.
I was like, that shouldn't be how I get myself out of this. But mom is always right. And so I did. Always right. So my stepdad um, drove all the way to New Orleans with a trailer on his Jeep and packed me up in a day and moved me back home. And from that moment on, my life started to go.
You were on the upswing.
It was on the upswing because little did I know. Probably the first year that had moved back, I was doing a lot of rebuilding. So I was just, when I tell you I was in a low place, I was in a low place, and there was a lot of old and bad habits that I was trying to break. And so like mom and dad, I know that when I was living with you guys, I wasn't always the best, but I hope you can have grace for me because I was breaking a lot of strongholds and a lot of things that I was just trying to cope, and I was trying to shake off a lot of things, and that doesn't always look graceful. But little did I know, a year later, my parents would start going to a new church, the one that we go to now. That's where me and Lauren met. And little did I know that probably 3 weeks to a month before I started going back to church, I had gone on a date with a guy, and he made it like very well known that he's like, hey, we were trying to figure out a date to get together. And he's like, hey, I'm going to church Sunday. How about Monday? And like something about that, like, I was like, oh, because I've never dated someone ever who went to church or like believed in God in that way enough to go to church. And I'm just like, okay, that's interesting. And he was also really good looking, so that helped him.
You're like, ooh, okay.
I'm like, oh, you're good looking and you love Jesus? Okay. That sparked something in me. And I do believe, it didn't work out between us, but I do believe that God puts people in your lives, testimony, to spark something. I do truly believe that that person was placed in my life at that moment to open my heart, to soften me up for what God was about to do. And the night before, I told my parents, I said, I think I'm going to go. And what hooked me, truthfully, was that Tim Tebow was preaching at our church on Super Bowl Sunday. And if y'all don't know already, I love football. And who doesn't love Tim Tebow? And so I was like, okay, all right, I'll give it a try.
Like, I mean, Tim Tebow is going to be there, sure. I'll
Sure,
go to
sure.
church.
So I went, but the night before, I felt that I needed to really have a one-on-one with God. And I hadn't done that in a very long time. Like, I'm talking years.
And you just felt like a pull in your heart.
I just felt this, like, I have to. And at that point, like, there had already been the first few sermon, like teachings and Sunday services. So what I did was put on worship music. I played the first couple of sermons, and guys, like, I'm not exaggerating, I felt God's presence and I just broke down. Like, I cried, I let it all out, I prayed, I repented. And that truly put me in a position, in a heart posture to go into church the next day and be willing to accept him and like welcome him back in my life. And I'm telling you guys, the last year, because it's been about a year now since I've been back in church, has been not always the prettiest, but it has been the coolest journey I've ever been part of. Even growing up in church, I have never felt anything like this, and I think that speaks to knowing God by your choice and on your own, like without people telling you what to do or all these standards. Like, it's truly a relationship between you and God, and if you lean into it, he will show up for you. And like, again, Spark Notes version, there's so much more I would love to share, but that's kind of the general story. It's just, I guess, to take it away, like, or to sum it up, is just like, you can think that you are too far gone, or that like you lost God, or he's not there.
You're never too far gone.
You're never too far gone. He's always with you, even in those moments where I said that I would cry out to him, even when I wasn't living for him. And
he comes through.
He comes through for that. So guys, just don't ever doubt him, and give him a chance and let him work. That's all I gotta say.
Oh, you have such a beautiful testimony. I think just, it's such a like rescue story.
It is.
You know? But like, also, you had to be ready to be rescued.
Yeah,
because he was like there the whole time.
And there were so many points in my life where he was just like,
I'm just waiting for you to say, I'm just waiting for you.
I'm waiting for you. But you do have to.
And as soon as you were like, okay, I'm ready to come back, I'm ready to come home, he was there.
Literally, it just felt like I got swept off my feet. Seriously. Like a Cinderella story. But
all right. So I think this is kind of, we talked about how testimonies can be so different. And I feel like mine is a little more of like accumulation, less than a moment. So I do think I kind of inherited a bit of my mom's just like underlying faith, because I just like, since being a kid, and I've essentially had gone to the same church since I was in like kindergarten. When we moved in our second house, my parents went to different churches. They decided on this church, and my mom like still goes to this church. When I'm in town, I still go to this church. Love this church. And I just never had a doubt. Like, I really didn't. It was just like, it just was what it was. And I just like felt strong. Like, there's a God. Jesus is the Son of God. I just knew. And I think that came from my mom. And, I have it, like, I went on a mission trip, in like 2022. And we kind of had like an altar call towards the end for the people we were working at the orphanage with. And I remember talking to someone and saying like, I don't actually remember that moment in my life. Like, I've prayed that prayer so many times, but like, I can't tell you, like, some people know like, oh, I was 7 and I, said that prayer for the first time. Like, I don't know that moment that I said that prayer, like when I accepted Jesus in my heart. I've said that prayer time and time again. I'll still say that prayer like on a Sunday morning. Like, I think you can accept Jesus into your heart over and over and over again. Right. Like, you can say that prayer literally every Sunday if you wanted to. And there's not a distinct moment for me where I'm like, it was this vacation Bible study.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I know that I've never had a doubt. I just have not had a doubt. And so for me, I feel like my testimony is more these periods of refinement and strengthening.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first period, I would say, was my sophomore year of college. And it was a time of huge transition in my life. Had gone away to college, came home my freshman year winter break, met my first boyfriend. I wasn't sheltered. My parents honestly were very like, they trusted me so much. I was just like such a good kid that like I could have gone to parties. I could have done pretty much anything, but I was just like such a good kid and never had a boyfriend, like didn't go to prom with a boy, like nothing. And so
Wow.
when I got my first boyfriend my freshman year of college, I was just like head over heels, like instantly. And it was just like that first love is so overwhelming and so powerful. And I don't think you ever experiencing anything like it. Like, I think it's a one-time kind of deal.
Because you're going into it with all these expectations of what love is supposed to be.
And it's just like, it takes you over. It really does.
Yeah.
Like, it completely takes over you. And you're young.
And you're so young.
Like,
you're Twitter
and so
pated, like they say in Bambi.
You're just like so taken over. I was so taken over. And that he was my first everything. My first everything. And so it was a very like big deal
It's significant.
relationship. And during this time period, my parents were also separating. And so I didn't actually know this when I went away to college. When my parents got home from dropping me off at college, my dad left. And my mom, being like the amazing mom that she is, that always puts me first, she hid it. And if I would come home, she would, have my dad come back and like just keep up this image, because she was
wow.
it was my freshman year, and my mom didn't want me to have any other stress, or like it's already so much change. Like you're in a new city, you're on your own for the first time, and my mom was trying so hard to protect me from going through it. And like I would call my mom and I could hear in her voice that something was off, and I knew something was off, but like she would not tell me. And I came home for Christmas break, and that's when I met this first boyfriend. And by the end of Christmas break, everything blew up, and my dad left the house, and I essentially kind of let myself just dive into this first boyfriend.
Yeah.
And I pushed off a lot of the feelings and the pain, and I just dived into this relationship, and I was just like, I'm in love, and I distracted myself with that. And so that went from, December up until like through the summertime. And he lived in DFW and I was at A&M in College Station. So it was long distance, like going back and forth, and went through the summertime. And then at the end of summer, he broke up with me. And it was like suddenly everything crashed down. So like
you felt everything.
Everything. Like the feelings I had been pushing back in regards to my parents, because I was able to distract myself. Suddenly I felt all of those feelings. Suddenly I felt it was the breakup, and I think I masked everything I was going through as the pain of the breakup.
Sure.
And I was horrendous. I was horrible to be around. I feel like I mentally blacked out for a good like 7 months. I broke a vase of my mom's. I literally like picked it up, held it in my hands, and threw it to the ground. And I don't remember it. And like my mom has told me this story, and I'm like, I don't remember it. I don't remember doing it.
I could never see you.
And like she said,
like
I
that.
looked her straight in the eye, and I just threw it on the ground. And I don't recall.
I don't believe that.
I have no recollection.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
it's just wiped. So I was really just, I was horrible to be around. And I was in this state of like, just, I don't know. I did, kind of as you were saying, I got very much so into partying during that season. I would go out all the time. I wasn't eating. The like only thing I could stomach was McDonald's chicken nuggets, and I would not eat anything else. And I'd like go through the McDonald's drive-through crying and order chicken nuggets, and I'd be like at the window just like bawling my eyes out. Like it was a time. Um, Went out a ton. Was like a stick. Lost so much weight. I like my mom was concerned at like how thin I was. Wasn't eating. Was drinking. Was going out all the time. And was just like kind of on a little mini spiral. And it was Easter weekend. I came home. We went to church and then we went to lunch, and I was just being a nightmare. It was my mom, my grandparents, and myself. And I was saying something about my 21st birthday, and I was like, well, me and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to say his name, but like, well, we'll be back together and we're going to go to Vegas for my 21st birthday. And I was just being like, I was being like a hellion. Like I really was. And my grandpa was like, we need to go outside. And my grandpa, like, my papa, like, never gets mad at me, never gets on to me. Like, I'm his only granddaughter. I'm his only grandchild. So he took me outside and he was like, basically, you got to stop this. And, you know, if y'all get back together, great. If not. And I don't, like, looking back now, I can see that all of that rebellion had way less to do with
The
boy and more just like my life being shaken, because that is one thing that I always say is like, I'm very blessed. I had an amazing childhood. I had an amazing life growing up. I had a great dad growing up, and a lot of things have changed. I think I'll get into that in a later date, but I was so blessed to have an amazing childhood, and I'm so thankful because I had that. And it was literally like my world got turned upside down, and I felt like I didn't really know who my dad was anymore, and it was just shaky. And seeing my mom also struggling and being protective of my mom. And so I think my grandpa saying that was my initial wake-up call. And then I found myself going back to school and just like seeking God like never before.
Wow.
And it was like the only time, because I was still just like crying nonstop. Like I would be in classes crying. Like it was really a dark season of depression. Like I would be in lectures crying, walking in between classes crying, like could not stop. And the only times I felt peace was being in churches. I started studying at the Methodist Student Center. I've never been Methodist in my life, but it was like on my walk home,
God's
I would
everywhere.
pass by the Methodist Student Center. And so one day I was like, I'm going to go study in there. And I just felt calm, and I just felt at peace. And then I would look up like any day of the week. I'd be like, it's a Wednesday on Google, like Wednesday service in College Station, Texas. Like every night I would just be like trying to find services, because I just like needed to be in a church. And like, you don't have to be in a church to encounter God.
No, you
but
don't.
But for me in that time, it was like I needed to be to be in those places to feel like close to him. And so I feel like that was really when I connected with God as an adult for the first time, like when I really strengthened my relationship. And I think that's what brought me out of that phase. Thank goodness for my family, because they probably thank goodness that happened, because my family probably couldn't have taken another year of me being like a complete maniac. So that, like, God got me out of it. And it was just like spending time with him. It was the only way I found peace. Like, literally, I would be crying unless I was like in a church or in that Methodist student center. It's like the only times that I felt relief. And like now, with the maturity of my faith I know that I could be in my room and start praying and calling on him and find that same comfort. But just at that point, I needed to physically be in those places.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is kind of the first refinement phase as an adult in my faith. And he provided that peace, like, without a doubt. Like, he's what provided the comfort. And then I think the second was during 2020. And I think for a lot of people, it was when they kind of refined their faith, because it forced us to slow down. And I was like I love a fast-paced life. Like, I traveled from 2017 through 2020 for work, like, all the time. I was home half of a month, and then I'd be on the road the other half, and I loved it. Like, I was depressed if I was home.
Oh my gosh.
I, like, didn't know how to sit still. I didn't know how to not be on the go, not be on the move. I would get home and I'm like, what now? Like, what do I do with myself? And then in 2020, travel stopped. So, like, my work stopped, and I had to get slow. I had to get quiet. Moving into turning 30 also. That's like a defining period, especially for women.
Yeah, guys.
And just when you have an image in your head
Yeah.
of what you want.
And where you think you're supposed to be.
Right. And so I'm already in this phase where I'm like, okay, I'm slow. I'm spending like unlimited time with God, which was amazing. Like, spending as much time as I wanted reading my Bible. Like, praying as long as I wanted. Like, not having to be on a routine because I had to get to work or anything. Just like spending so much time with him. And then was paired up with a discipleship partner at my church who was 39. She had just gotten married. And so she was kind of this example of, your timeline's going to look different. And like, we think there's a checklist that has to be done between a certain time, but everyone's timeline is going to look different. Like, God has a plan for all of us, a beautiful plan. And I would say right around 30, I was kind of doing another spiral and just kind of like going wild a little bit. Like, I went through a phase where I went a little wild and made choices I'm not proud of, and it was just a bit of a downward spiral, but it was like a quicker downward spiral.
Yeah.
And
like
I like
long.
got out of it quicker. And it really, like, having that discipleship partner and leaning into trusting God's timing, knowing, kind of like you said, that you can always go back to him, because it's always been my tendency to run from him when I make a mistake or I have a regret or I have shame. I would like run the opposite direction. Like, I don't want to pray. I don't want to pray. I don't even deserve to pray. I don't deserve to talk to you. Like, that was my mindset. And like shifting that mindset, and it's still something that like I have to battle with sometimes. Like, I feel like you make a mistake and you feel like unworthy of praying.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's actually when you need to talk to him the most.
Yeah, and that's so far from the truth. Yeah.
It's so hard though. It's so hard.
Yeah.
And so through this discipleship partner, like, she just really helped me realize, like, that I was idolizing a lot of things. I was idolizing career goals. I was idolizing, like, being married. I was idolizing having kids. And I had placed all of these things, above. I would like to think I hadn't placed them above God, but they were such idols in my life, and they had such a strong hold on me to where I thought, like, well, the only way I can be happy is if I have the career I dream of, the life I dream of. And I had to really, I talked about it a little bit with the love episode, but I had to shift my mindset and give it all to God and place it all at his feet and put him number one. And honestly, as I made that shift, like, my life has also completely changed. I think, I guess part 3, like I said, there's like some of the ones where it's like they come to Jesus, and then other, like, they're like multi-chapter books or something. But like going into part 3, I have never seen God move in my life so much as he has in this stage. So I surrendered all of those things to God. And, you know, flash forward a year and a half or so, I'm like not even looking for a job. A coworker, when I was living in Dallas and working on my travel job, she lived in LA. She came across this job in Austin, and she sent it to me, and she was like, I know you're in Dallas, but you know, this job's in Texas. Would you, like, you'd be great at it. And I saw it, and I actually auditioned for this job that I have in 2018.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, I like drove down to Austin, auditioned, did not get the job at that time in 2018. Flash forward, she sends me the job. I was like, oh my gosh, I've auditioned for this job. This is so many years later. I have so much more experience. So I spend all night updating my hosting reel, like getting my video clips. I'm on my computer, like editing my reel, trying to update it. I didn't have like video clips. I hadn't had anything on my video reel since college, like applying for initial jobs. So I'm like updating it, stay up like all night, submit it like 4 a.m, have an email by 8 a.m. Like, when can you come down to Austin and audition? And I was just like, wait, what? How is this happening so fast? And I had to go on a work trip. So like go on this work trip, and I'm like playing phone tag with the vice president, and I'm literally coming home from my work trip on a Wednesday. I had a Thursday off, and I was leaving for another trip on Friday. So I was like, I can come down on Thursday. And I'm like, please let it happen, knowing it's the only day
Oh my gosh.
that it can happen. So my mom drives me down. Like, they agree for Thursday. My mom drives me down to Austin. I was in the car. We stopped at Quick Trip. My mom went inside. I'm in the car, and I was just praying, like, Lord, let hearts be inclined towards me. And I forget what scripture I was reading, but I had read about like God being able to incline people to you. So I'm like, let people I encounter be inclined toward me. Let their hearts be inclined towards me. And it was like, I walked in that building, and it was just like every door was swinging open. Like everything was so easy. And like,
that's what God's
it
favor
shouldn't
is,
be
though.
that easy. It's like, I feel like I had the job before I walked in the door. Like, I went in, I did a screen test. I don't even think the VP had seen the screen test by the time I went to his office, and he offered me the job.
That's awesome.
Like, I was in complete shock. Like, I never imagined I would get the job that day. And I'm walking in the car, and like, this had turned into like a 4-hour audition interview. I did not imagine that. My mom's sitting in the car for like 4 hours. And I'm like walking to the car, and before I can even get in the car, my mom's crying. And she was like, you got it. And I was like, I got it. And I couldn't believe it. And then it was like quick. It was like, I had a 2-week work trip to Oklahoma, and then I moved like the week after. So basically, on the way home, I saw my apartments off the freeway, and I was like, I'll look those up online. And like, this is where I live now. I was like, that looks cute. It's by a river. And I like looked it up on Google Maps, and I was like, okay, I like it.
that'll do.
And went to Oklahoma for my like final work trip of my other job. And it was really just kind of dreary. Like, Oklahoma, I don't know, like, nothing against Oklahoma, but
Well, I'm just kidding.
but like 2 weeks in Oklahoma in like a hotel room, like, you're just kind of like, I was just kind of blah.
Yeah.
And so I was on a Joy in the Morning kick. Like, that was my song. I would get up, and I'd be like blaring Joy in the Morning in my hotel room, like trying to hype myself up. And I sent it to my mom, and I was like, you have to hear this song. And so she goes and she follows Torrin Wells on Instagram, and she messages me, and she goes, I think he's opening a church where you're moving.
That's
And I was like,
insane.
what? She was like, yeah, like that guy Torrin Wells, look on his Instagram. And I go on his Instagram, sure enough, like he's opening a church where I live. And I go to like follow the church. I had already been following the church.
What?
Because pre-launch of the church, they were posting like just videos with scripture. And so I guess since I
okay.
follow so many Christian pages, it had popped up and I followed it. So I was already following the church. One of the days when I was in Oklahoma, Torrin did a live prayer on Instagram Live at like 7 p.m. And I'm like sitting in my hotel room watching the live prayer.
Wow.
I moved, I finished that job. I moved to Austin on a Saturday. I started work on a Monday. The first like connect group night was the following Wednesday. And this is like before the church even opened. So I literally walked in that Wednesday and I sat down at a table of people, some of which like I still know and I'm close with
Yeah,
now.
that's so amazing.
And I was like, we're like all kind of talking about like, oh, where are we from? And I'm like, I moved here on Saturday. I started my job on Monday. Like I am brand new here. But it was just like, that is only God's timing.
Well, I would say, Lauren, like you said this year, your word was bold, and being bold was your theme of the year. But I think the moment you decided to obey and like maybe you didn't even know at the time that that was God working, but like I think that was the start of your bold era. Like I really
Thank
do. You're welcome,
you.
my friend. I truly believe that. And like this is my first time hearing your story, and like that takes some guts, girl, to like uproot everything you've known, move to a new city by yourself, new job, new church, new everything. And you did it, and you leaned in, and look where we are
I know.
now.
It's like it's so crazy to think about. And I just looking back now, I know with certainty like God used the job. He used the job
Totally.
to get me to Austin. Like he used the job to get me to Whitestone.
Hmm.
I had lived in Austin before. I lived in Austin in 2016 and I was like I will never live there
Oh
again.
yeah, you did say that.
Like I lived closer to downtown. I didn't love the city. I'm very partial to Dallas, you guys. I love Dallas. Like home is where the heart is. Like I love Dallas so much. I was like I will never live in Austin again. Here I am. And like only that job, because it was kind of a dream job,
Right.
only that job would have got me here. Like I can't imagine anything else getting me here. And so God used it. He used that to get me here. And then next thing I know, like Church of Whitestone, like this song that has been motivating me every day, and like this singer is starting a church. Like the week I move, they're starting these Wednesday night connect groups. Like what are the odds? And
It isn't odds.
no, it's not. Like it's literally only God. Like he knew that I needed to be a part of this community, and I feel like I yearned kind of my whole life to feel more connected in a church. And I love my church at home, but I felt like more of a observer than a participant.
Sure.
And I feel like where we are now, I feel like such a part of it. And I feel like I yearned for a church like that. And it's where I'm meant to be. And I'm so certain that that is all of this was to get me to Whitestone, to get us to this moment.
Yeah.
Like, I even just look at like the first like 6 months of me living here before the church launched, I felt like completely isolated. I had no friends here. I would leave my job and like, y'all, your dream job isn't always a dream, okay? Sometimes it's a nightmare. And I would leave work and I would sit in my car and I would just cry and like bawl my eyes out. And I'd be
Lauren.
like, this is the worst mistake of my life.
Aw.
Like, why did I do this to myself? Why did I leave home? What was I thinking? Literally launch day, January 28th,
Launch day for the
2024.
church.
Yeah. Launch day for the church. Yeah, not the podcast, but for the church, like my whole life changed. I belonged. I like had an instant community. it all made sense. Like that season of crying in my car and being alone was like, suddenly it all made sense, like why I had to go through that, because I've never been a part of a community. I've never felt closer to God. I've never felt like he's using me more.
That's so. I love that. I love that.
It's just like he did it, and it's so clear. It's so clear to me, and I never would have guessed it, but like I know he was at work, and he
Shoot, Lauren.
was so good, because look at, here we are. I mean, like, I wouldn't have met you.
I know.
Like, if I didn't live in the city, we would have never crossed paths. We would not be doing this podcast. Like, I mean, God can see everything. We can't see any of it. And
I'm glad that I met you because, I think us and some other people too were feeling isolated. And, my best friends live, we're all spread out. We live in different states, so we talk, but we don't get to see each other as much. And so, but having a friend like where you are is important because you do need friendship. You need to be around people. And I didn't realize it, but like I needed a God-fearing woman, even before I was in church, I feel like I didn't have friends. And if I did, it was they were acquaintance level or surface level. Didn't really go out and do stuff together. And I'm just really glad that I met you.
I know. I feel like we have it's so funny because someone had messaged, our friend Jen had messaged after the first episode and was like, I had no idea that y'all weren't.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
before.
I thought y'all were like already like,
oh, yeah.
besties.
Yeah.
Because we've just bonded so much. Like, we were not close, as we mentioned in the first episode.
No, like we had dinner, we didn't even know each other.
We barely knew each other when we started this journey, and then we've just like grown so close to one another. And it's like constant voice memos, and not just about the podcast, but like literally about
Just
everything
life.
in life. Like anything that happens, I'm like, da, 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 da. Like instantly, like you're my go-to. And
It feels good to have a relationship like this at this point in my life. Because I mean, I'll be honest, like, I wasn't so sure I wanted to open myself up to new relationships because as an adult, it's hard. You don't really know if you're going to mesh with that person, if you're going to agree on things. So at this point in your life, you're pretty solid in what you believe in. And like your just worldview, your lifestyle.
but that's also what bonded us.
Yeah, because it is similar. Yeah. And if you don't know what we're talking about, go watch episode 1.
Yeah, episode 1, how the podcast came to be, how we came to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my testimony essentially, I feel like in 3 parts of like
Yeah.
strengthening my faith as an adult, re-strengthening my faith, and at that time too, that like part 2, that's when I got baptized.
Oh,
In 2021, I was baptized, and then part 3 is like literally God uprooting me, isolating me, and then bringing me into the best time of my life.
I just thought of, how like the Bible says, repent, be baptized, and you shall receive the Holy Spirit. I just thought like your story is like the first part was repentance. Second part, you got baptized. Third part, you are leaning into something so special, and that can only happen through the Holy Spirit. And it's just like,
He works it all out.
yeah,
He works
it all makes sense. And your
out.
story is so, like, I had no idea. And now, like, I feel like I know you better. And your story, like you said, like, our stories are different. Our testimonies are different. But, like, I know so many people who would be touched to hear what you just said and shared. I mean, even for me, on a deeper level, like, that you're speaking to the person that what I was as a kid. Like, you're speaking to that part of me. And it resonates.
It's y'all, I'm telling you, it's not easy to share. It's like, it's hard.
Yeah.
And so we are called to get comfortable sharing. So
Calling over comfort.
yes. So we hope that these testimonies will reach even just one person.
Yeah.
But if anything,
Heaven rejoices over one soul.
And I
One.
just also hope, like, even if our stories don't directly resonate with you, I hope that our testimony encourages you to start sharing your testimony. And it doesn't have to be the long form.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like mine went on forever. I'm sorry.
I wanted to hear it.
But even just sharing your God winks, you guys, I'm telling you, those are all a part of your testimony.
The little
Every
snapshots.
little God wink is a part of your testimony. Sharing those on your social media, y'all. I mean, getting on your stories on Instagram and being like, telling a quick little story of something that just happened that's like a God wink. Like,
Yeah.
you don't know who's going to watch that. You don't know who's going to hear that. Like, we have, social media can be a bad thing, but it's also a tool.
Totally. We can totally, just like we are redefining Valentine's Day, we can take control of the culture and
use it for our benefit.
And use it for the betterment of the kingdom of God. And
use it for God.
I really think that we're seeing that already.
We are.
Like college campuses, 3 years ago, if you were to start talking about college campuses, I would be like, like what goes on campuses.
Now it's
what
like
these people are
revivals
talking
in
about.
the air.
Now there's people like preaching the gospel on college campuses, and there is just a huge crowd around them, and it is just the coolest thing. Athletes professing their belief in Jesus and giving him glory after football games, win or lose. Coaches, being so bold and giving glory to God. That's so, it's not something that I saw 5 years ago. 5 years ago, this country, we were totally pushing God away. And
and the young generation.
In the young generation,
Yeah.
I had sorry guys, but I had my doubts about the younger generations. But you guys have you've certainly proved me wrong.
Yeah, there's been a swing. There's been a swing back, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
There's revival coming.
And there are people hungry and thirsty for God, and it's very evident. And that's another reason why, we are pretty bold about, DJ here and, our support of him.
DJ here.
DJ here.
And here.
But despite your opinions of him, when the choice we had, I was voting for the administration, not just him, because it's not just Donald Trump, it's his administration and the people who he has chosen to run everything. They just align more with what we want to see happen. And God was going to find a way, either way, regardless of who won. And, I had prepared myself and mentally been okay, I'm okay with either which way.
Jesus is king.
Jesus is going to take control. He has a plan, and this is part of it. But, I am happy that there is this new revival, and
it does
you
feel
can
like
feel it.
Revival.
Totally.
It does. And I even just feel like the first, month now? Less than a month of this administration. Is it less than a month? A month?
When was inauguration? The 20th. Oh, y'all, when was inauguration?
So less than a month.
It's been about.
In about a month, we've seen so much change for the good.
Yeah, and it might not look like it.
Well, and I think,
but I think
we've seen a lot of
things have to be shaken up and torn apart before they can be put back together. That's my opinion. And although it does seem like what we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast,
it seems like there's so much division right now.
It seems like there's a lot of division and that we should be angry with each other, but keep an open mind and an open heart and realize that things are gonna look worse before they can get better, especially with what was built on the table, right? What was built was not strong.
Yeah.
It was gonna fall, and it was put together very poorly. And so taking that apart. It takes time, and sometimes you have to yank things out.
Yeah.
So if I could delicately and gently say that, give it some time. And now, are there going to be things that straight up are just not right? Yeah, of course. And I would hope that we would call it out, and keep the people we voted for accountable for their actions. And I know I will. I mean, like, because I already said, like, before, Christian conservatives were my least favorite people,
Yeah.
and that's for a reason. It's because they didn't live out what they what is it? They walked the walk, but didn't, or talk the talk, but didn't walk the walk.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you guys, that's important, because there's a reason why people dislike people on our side, is because we're hypocrites. And you guys have to be, we have to be very careful about that. And that's my hope. And that's actually, we have a mission, but like, I also have like a kind of like an underlying mission to kind of like heal that up, because there's work to be done, and we're not perfect.
And I think too, just noticing, and we kind of said it in the beginning, right, with how a lot of the news media we're seeing right now, we're seeing the bad.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing
They're
the
always going to show you the bad.
division. But I do think there are a lot of beautiful things happening.
Yeah.
And I mean, just looking at, and we're going to have a guest that we're going to talk to, but like looking at our healthcare and our food and how things are going to change, that's amazing.
It's so big.
Looking at what's being done with sports, that's amazing.
Yeah, women's
like,
sports.
There are amazing things happening. There are good things happening. And I think sometimes the attention just is going to be pulled to the negative.
Yeah.
And so do your due diligence, and, you know.
And we love you either way.
Yeah. Either way, we love you.
We love you, love you, love you.
And so hopefully at the end of this now, y'all probably know us a little bit better in our journeys.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do hope that this encourages you to share your testimony, you guys. This week, we challenge you. Go out there this week, this weekend. Share your testimony with someone.
And drop in the comments, like, how you were able to do that.
Yes.
Because I would love
let
to
us
see.
know, like, DM us, or let us know in the comments how you are out there sharing your testimony.
And share with us your God winks, too.
Yes,
like,
your God winks. We do want to know your God winks. That's perfect. I love that. We want to know those God winks.
Yeah.
So share your God winks. Share how you're sharing your testimony. Y'all, it can start small. You don't have to do the long form like Lex and I just did. Literally share a God wink with someone that you encounter at work, and pray for God to give you those opportunities, because I'm telling you, when you ask him, he will start opening up those opportunities, but you got to be prepared. You've got to be prepared. You've got to be ready.
Yeah.
Like, when the opportunity presents, be like, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
I'm good. Like, God's speaking through me right now.
And walk in confidence.
Control.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Let your
confident.
get your God glow on, y'all. That is the glow up, okay? Get your God glow on.
Up.
I love it. We're just like redefining everything. Last week we redefined Valentine's Day. Today we're redefining what a glow up is. A glow up is when you start having God glowing from within you.
Yep. Got the Holy Spirit just radiating off
Radiates. All right, friends, go get your God glow on.
Get it.
We will see you next Friday.
We love you.